You're listening to the Elvis Ultimate Fan Channel podcast, the channel that is devoted 100% to the life and career of the biggest selling recording artist of all time, with your host, Steve Francis.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode from Elvis the Ultimate Fan Channel. My special guest today is Sandi Miller. Sandi was an Elvis fan who over the years became a close personal friend of his. She was a guest in his various homes and took many of the candid photographs we have of him. Sandi has many special memories of her times with Elvis and is going to share some of those with me now. Hi Sandi, you're very welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's my pleasure. It really is. I've been looking forward to speaking to you for a long time, actually.
It takes a while to get together, doesn't it?
It does, yes. And then we have little glitches and things like that as well. But it all comes together eventually, you know, if you have patience. Could you start by telling our listeners where you were born and raised?
Yes, I was born in Holland and lived there until I think I was like 13. And then we moved to Minnesota. And that's where I stayed until I moved to California in the mid-'60s.
Well,
and I moved here. Then I moved here to Vegas.
Well, I've just learned something new then, because I thought you were actually born in the U.S. So you're born in Holland.
Yes, I was.
Well, there's a connection there as well, because as people probably know, Colonel Parker was born in Holland, Breda.
Yes, I know.
and so let's just dive straight in then. How did you first come to meet Elvis?
Well, long story short, when I was in Minnesota, I had a pen pal that lived in California, and she invited, we wrote for several years, and then she invited me to come out during school break one summer. I think it was a junior in high school at the time. And she said, I'll take you up to Elvis's house. And I said, Elvis lives in Memphis. And she said, yes, he lives in Memphis, but he also has a home out here. And she goes, we go up there once in a while. And she says, he always stops. He always stops to say hi. So that's how I first met him, was going up to the house. Her mom actually took us up to the house. And sure enough, he came home from the studio. He was in a Rolls Royce, and he stopped. And it was like literally maybe a 30-second stop, and then he drove through the gate, and that was that. And so then that was basically the first. I wouldn't even call it a meeting. That's the first time I saw him.
Yeah. And what year was that?
65.
Right. So right in the middle of movie making.
Right. And that was it. He was coming home from the studio.
And I'm sure you must have got a great kick out of just seeing him there in front of you.
It was, I hardly even remember it because I think I was in shock.
Yeah, you were probably thinking, is this really happening? Pretty much.
But yeah, I'll tell you one thing. Once you saw him, it was like instant addiction. You had to see him again.
Yeah.
And he had such a memory. My roommate, the gal that took me up there, she basically introduced, in those few seconds that he stopped, she said, this is my friend Sandi from Minnesota. And that's all she said. I couldn't even tell you what he said. I have no recollection of it whatsoever. And I moved out to California the following year. And again, we went up to his house and stood at the gate, hence the name Gate Girl. But a year later, when he drove up, he pointed his finger at me and he said, Sandi from Minnesota, right?
Wow.
That was a year later.
And only probably being told your name once as well.
Not only that, but I mean, it was seconds, literally.
Yeah.
And for him to remember that, just kind of, but I noticed through the years he was very good with remembering names and faces and just everything, really.
And tell me, some people say that he is better looking in person than he was on film or in pictures. Would you say that was right?
Oh, 100%.
Goodness me, he must have been very handsome then.
He was always the prettiest one in the rooms, and that includes the girls too. He,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
was he was he was gorgeous. He
yeah.
really was.
I remember a musician in the American studios, the Sound Studios sessions in 1969 that he did in Memphis. One of the musicians said he was better looking than most women he'd seen.
Yeah, he was. He was just gorgeous. He was one of those people where you really didn't want to look away. You didn't want to take your eyes
Hmm.
off of him.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
just pretty.
Yeah. So what happened after that then? So you moved to California.
I did.
What happened then? Because obviously, more happened and you got closer to Elvis. So if you can tell our listeners what happened next.
It was a very, very gradual thing. My roommate and I, we would go up after work, because we would get off work. We lived about an hour away from Beverly Hills. So we would get up there about the time he was coming home from the movie studio every day. So we just got to see him constantly, several times a week, and he always stopped and he always talked. Sometimes he would just stay in the car. Other times he would pull through the gate, park the car, and walk back out to the gate and spend 15, 20 minutes talking with everybody. So, that went on for a few years. In the meantime, he just got to know people. I I started dating Charlie, so
Oh, Charlie Hodge.
yes. So,
Oh, right.
so that had a lot to do with also, getting inside the house. Although, to give Charlie credit, the first time he invited me in, because it was Charlie that actually first invited me in, he said, "If you're going in with me just to meet Elvis," he goes, "that's not going to work." And I go, "Well, I already met him." So,
Yeah, yeah.
that's not the issue, because I truly liked Charlie. He was a nice guy. So, like I say, it's a gradual thing. It just developed over the years. I can't pinpoint any particular. I don't know when it changed, but the end result was I quit going up to the gate because it seemed kind of silly to be doing that. And basically, if they were coming into town, I would get a call saying, "Okay, we're going to be in town tomorrow. If you want to come over." Or if they were going to Palm Springs for the weekend, which happened several times a month, they would call and say, "Okay, we're going to be in Palm Springs for the weekend. Do you want to come down for the weekend?" And then I would go down Friday night after work and return back home Sunday night. So I'd be home in time to go to work on Monday. But it was it's just one of those things. It just gradually.
Yes, it
It's a
evolved.
gradual.
It evolved. He probably came to trust you over time because you were at the gate a lot. I know you jokingly say you were called Gate Girl, but I think that would be kind of unfair because as it evolved, you became more of a friend. So you would have been an Elvis friend, not so much a girlfriend, but a friend. Would that be right?
Yes. Yeah, I classify myself as a gate girl because that is how it started.
I was going to say, obviously, at times when you were round the gate, being a gate girl, you took quite a few photographs of Elvis, and you also had quite a few photographs taken with Elvis.
I did.
There's some fabulous photographs actually around about the 1969 mark where he's in a yellow shirt, and he looks
Yes.
he looks absolutely fantastic.
He looked fantastic in all the photos.
Particularly that one, I think.
We used to give him every time we took photos. We always had duplicate sets made, not only to share among each other, because there was like a core group of 4 to 5 fans that were regulars. They were there every night. So we would exchange among ourselves, but we also always gave Elvis copies of everything. And he always had disparaging remarks to make about himself.
Tell me a little bit about a story I heard where he asked you one day why you weren't taking photographs.
One time was because I was out of flash cubes and it was dark, so you can't take a photo with the Instamatic camera without a flash cube.
No.
And so that was the answer I gave him for that. And he said, "Well, he says, if you want to run down to the village and get some, he says, I'll go in and have dinner and I'll come out later. And he did exactly that. And I did exactly that.
He's such a fantastic guy, isn't he? He loved his fans. He would almost do anything for his fans.
You know, he was amazing with the fans. I cannot think of another entertainer to this day that would come out almost every single night, number one. Number two, that actually learned the names of his fans and, you know, got to know them on a personal level. And I can give you instances where he went out of his way to, if he didn't see somebody for a while, he would go out of his way to try to find out what happened to him because he was worried. If any of the boys or anything said something about, you know, come on, let's get going, he would say, no, I want to stay here, I want to visit. And that never changed over the years. I mean, well, the last couple of years he was kind of more reclusive once he moved to the Monovale house. But even then, the people that had been coming around prior to his move to the Monovale house were still being invited up there. So he had his little core group of people that did not work for him that were still around.
Can you tell me a little bit about being inside the homes of Elvis when he was obviously entertaining, or was he just relaxing, or what did he do when you were in there?
Pretty much what everybody does inside their house.
Watch television and talk, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. It wasn't, I never saw any of those wonderful wild parties everybody seems to think he had. That may have been before my time, I don't know. But it was just like if you had a bunch of friends over, you know, you sit around, you talk, you watch TV, you hang out by the pool. It could almost come under the heading of boring some days. And I know that's hard if it weren't for Elvis, you know.
Yeah.
To sit there and watch TV for 9 hours.
Well, you see, I've said this to other guests and other fans as well. I do firmly believe there were probably two Elvises. There was the image, and then there was just the private Elvis, who was just an ordinary guy.
Absolutely. And he had so many sides to him, so many, I don't want to say personalities, because I don't want to make him sound like he was some kind of a Sybil or something, but but the minute he walked into a room, you knew his mood. You just knew it. You could feel it. It was either going to be a good day or it was going to be a bad day.
Yeah. Somebody said to me once, you didn't even have to be facing the doorway when he walked in. You could almost feel him behind you walking in.
Oh, I'll give you one better than that. We kind of had the feeling whenever he was in town, even before we got the phone call.
Wow.
We kind of knew, okay, he's on his way.
Movie nights. You spent time at the movies with him as well when you went to the Memphian and so forth, did you?
Yeah, I went to not that many, maybe 5 or 6 movie nights. I only went to Memphis a few times. But yeah, we saw, God, the only movie I can remember was a movie called Blow Up.
Okay.
But yeah, we went to several movies when we were in Memphis. Got to go into Graceland.
Wow, I was just about to ask you, did you ever go into Graceland?
Yes, we did.
Well, I've been there once, but obviously just as part of a tour, you know.
Oh yeah, no, this was when he was alive. This was straight from the movies right over to Graceland. So that was very memorable, to say the least.
Yes, yeah. And have you visited Graceland since his death?
I have. After he died, I didn't go for a long time. So I don't think I started going again until 1980. I think it was 1980 was the first time I went back.
Yeah. Yeah, they opened it, I think, in 1982, I think, didn't they? I want to ask you, I read somewhere about one time when some of the guys were being unkind to a girl in one of the Palm Springs homes.
One of the boys had a girlfriend, and she wanted to bring her sister into the home to meet Elvis. Now, the girlfriend was gorgeous. Her sister, not so much. And the guys were kind of snickering about her and basically ignoring her. And Elvis caught on to that real quick and stood up from the couch, walked over to her, took her hand, and he says, "Let me show you the house." And as he's walking out of the living room, and he was headed towards the kitchen, he turned around and shot everybody a look that could have killed. But he took her around the house. He showed her the house. It's not a big house. Then took her out in the backyard, showed her the pool, brought her back in, sat her down, and he says, "Can I get you something to drink?" And, she was just a nervous wreck. And he went to the kitchen and he got her a glass of lemonade. And everybody got the hint. You better just shape up. But yeah, he made her feel very special. He was very good at doing that. A lot of times, even at the gate, you would get the very rambunctious fans who were like all over him and in his face. And then you'd get the ones that were quiet and just kind of stood back and were just watching him. And he'd bring them forward. He'd say, come here. What's your name? Come here. And, do you want a picture taken? He would pick out the people that needed to be picked out, and that needed to be reassured. And he did it effortlessly. I mean, it was just like a second nature to him almost to be kind like that.
Yeah, he sounds such a great guy. I never met him, unfortunately. I wish every day that I'd have met him. He handled that situation so well, with the guys being unkind to the girl in the house. He could have just yelled them out, but instead he just showed them how they should have behaved.
Right, without saying a word.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Can you share his his silly humor? I know he had a great sense of humor. I often think sometimes that me and him would have got on well because we seem to share the same sort of humor. We like silly things and things like that.
You mean wicked?
Yes, yeah, wicked. Yeah, I can be wicked sometimes. Yes.
Yeah, he could be. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, he could be quite the jokester. There was one time in Palm Springs, and it was night. It was late, probably 10 or 11. And a couple of guys were staying at a local hotel, and there was only one or two left there at the house, and a few of us girls. And the guys, I don't remember, all of a sudden they just kind of disappeared out of the living room. And the next thing we hear is this scratching at the window, and scared the crap out of us. And we're jumping up and we're running around and we're screaming, "Oh, somebody's trying to break in! Somebody's trying to break!" Because there was no fence around this house.
Yeah.
Anybody could walk up to the front door. And it turned out it was Elvis out there being weird.
Just trying to scare you all.
And it worked.
Yeah. I've also got a note here to say how Elvis loved beautiful women. Fair enough, but he also but he also needed the women to be able to have intelligent conversations, discussions, and a great sense of humor. So, do you think that those traits in women were more important, maybe, than their looks?
I think the looks is what attracted him first, but if there wasn't anything past that, he lost interest very quickly, like literally within hours. He liked, this man could talk. This man could talk your ear off. He liked to talk. And he could talk about anything. He was interested in everything, history and religion and you name it, and he could talk about it. And so, he wanted somebody who could, give him feedback and discuss things with him. So that was very important. He didn't want somebody that was just going to sit there and smile and nod their head while he's doing all the talking.
Yeah. He wanted feedback and somebody to be able to be, knowledgeable on the same subject that he was talking about.
Exactly.
I've got including here. He misspelled your name wrong once. Is that correct?
No, and it's not that he misspelled it wrong. I had him sign something once, and because I spelled my name with a I just because he was always asking people, how do you spell that? How do you spell that?
Yes.
So when I had him sign something, I said it's Sandy with an I. So he wrote to Sandy with an I.
Yeah.
Just the whole sentence. And another time, I had an album that I wanted him to sign, and I said, "Can you make this out to me?" So he says, "To Sandy from me." That's my autograph. I have an autograph that says, "To Sandy from me."
So, I mean, just going back to what we were saying there, he wanted to have an intelligent conversation and so about certain subjects, but he was also interested in people as well. I'm sure he'd ask people lots of questions about themselves.
Oh heavens, yes. He that's what made him so different. It wasn't all about him. He didn't talk about himself. If you asked him a question about himself, yeah, he might give you a little bit, but he was more interested in where are you from, how'd you get out here, what do you do, what do you think about this, what do you think about that. That's what he was, and he'd remember this stuff. And I don't know, there was a lady, an older lady and her husband who used to go up to the Hillcrest house. They'd come up every weekend, just on the weekends. Older couple, not in the best of health, but this was something they liked to do, something they looked forward to doing. And then all of a sudden, her and her husband didn't show up for several weekends in a row. And so he was asking all of us, what does anybody know what happened to Jane? And we're like, no. And he goes, well, what's her last name? Well, we didn't know each other's last names. We knew each other's first names. Well, nobody knew her last name. And how he found, I think Charlie said that he remembered her license plate number or something. I think that's who told me that. I don't remember now. Mm-hmm. But long story short, he tracked her down. He tracked down this woman who lived in Van Nuys, California, and got in his car by himself, drove out there. She lived in a trailer park, come to find out, and knocked on her door and wanted to know, was everything okay? Because he knew they were not in the best of health. Well, it turns out her husband had died, and that's why she hadn't been up, because she didn't drive. He did all the driving. Mm. Well, we ran into her in Vegas. This is how we found out. She's the one that told us the story, and then I followed up with it to find out more. So she's telling us, Elvis showed up at my house, and we're like, yeah, sure he did. And she goes, but she hauled out of her wallet a picture that she had taken, that her friend had taken, of Elvis in her living room, and you could still see the pictures from the flowers from the funeral in the background. And here's a picture of her and Elvis. So that's when I asked Charlie what the deal was, and that's how I got the background story of what had happened. So yeah, he had a way of finding out things about people.
Yeah, that's a fabulous story. That's an absolutely fabulous story. Did he ever speak about his movies? We know that he was, sort of the mid to end of the 60s, he was very sort of disenchanted with his movies. Did he ever speak to you about them?
I wouldn't say I'd call it speaking about them. He would come home from the studio and make fun of them. And he'd give you kind of hints about what the movie was going to be about. And I know one time, I forget what movie he was filming, but he goes, yep, today was a great day. He goes, I got to sing to chickens. He'd just make fun of them. I mean, I'm sure he complained about him to other people, but as far as talking about it to fans and stuff, he'd just make fun of stuff.
Yeah. I would imagine, just thinking about it, he was probably filming Old MacDonald. He did Old MacDonald in the movie Double Trouble around about 1966, 67, so it could have been then.
It could have been then. Yeah, I felt bad for him. that's why when he did the '68 special, it was so nice to see him excited about something. He was just so looking forward to that. Nervous as heck, but
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask you about that because you actually attended the tapings, didn't you?
we did, and also we got our tickets from him to go because he was afraid nobody was going to show up. So he was literally at the gate handing out tickets, which were free anyway. We had already sent for our tickets. All you had to do was send a self-addressed stamped envelope to NBC Studios, and I think they gave you up to 4 tickets per address or something like that. It was either 4 or 6, I don't remember. So we had already received our tickets, and he's out handing out more. But yeah, he was excited about that.
So tell me a little bit about actually seeing Elvis. This was probably been the first time, other than seeing him on television and in movies, actually perform.
Oh, I'd never seen him perform. So it was amazing. And it was a very small room. I don't know if that comes across on the screen, but that was not a big room that he was in. They had bleachers set up around the stage. But yeah, it was like a whole different person out there. Just a whole different person.
Yeah, it definitely was a comeback by all accounts. When you sort of see Elvis on the NBC TV special, and then you see him a year before in Double Trouble, it's just a complete and utter different guy altogether.
And you could tell he was having fun, and he was loving it. He was loving it.
And of course, you would have been privy to all the sort of the outtakes and all the setups and things like that, because obviously when it's all edited together, it's seamless. But I'm sure there's times when they had to stop and retake and do everything.
Oh, many times. They had to do a lot of retakes on a lot of things, which I think didn't they release a set of all the retakes?
Yes. There's a box set now of just about everything that was in the can at the time. Yes. So all that's sort of shown as well. Tell me, they got the girls to sit on the edge of the stage, did they?
Yes, they kind of went around and picked people to sit around the edge of the stage.
Have you ever seen Have you ever seen yourself on the TV special?
Oh yeah, I can see myself.
Okay.
I can see a lot of the girls that were regulars at the gate are the 2 redheaded sisters. And her name was Teresa, and I cannot remember the other one. Linda Hahn. Yeah, there's a lot of the regular people at the stage, which is why they're fairly calm, sort of.
They'd be used to being quite close to him anyway.
Yeah, I guess so.
Although they'd never quite seen him like that before.
None of us had.
Then 1969, and after the comeback special, he went back to Vegas, a very successful homecoming to Vegas, because the first time he'd been in Vegas in 1956, it wasn't a success. They just weren't ready for him. It was just the wrong time, I think.
Yeah.
But you can't say that about 1969. Did you see Elvis live in Vegas?
In Vegas?
Yeah.
Heavens, yes. We went. He would go in January and August, I think, and we would go every January, every August, usually for a week. We'd go a few days before he opened, and then we'd come back a few days before he closed and stayed for a few days after he was closed.
And again, it's sort of, it's completely different to the guy that sort of, visited with you at the gate.
Again, yes. we would go a few days early because we could go to the rehearsals. Sometimes, not all the time. You had to be invited. So we'd go to a few rehearsals, and also he wasn't. Once he started doing the shows, which is like 30 days, and that's another thing, 30 days straight, 2 shows a night, sometimes 3. Who does that? Nobody does that anymore.
No.
Nobody did it back then.
No.
I don't know how he did it, like superhuman.
Well, we know now that it did take its toll.
It did.
I would imagine that probably by about 1973, maybe 74, the novelty was wearing off.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the reasons why he started touring after sort of the tail end of 1970 onwards, was because, probably after 2 or 3 seasons in the International Hotel, it was probably starting to get a bit old.
I'm sure. When you work that hard and that, I mean, he didn't even know what day it was. Sometimes it was that grueling,
Mm.
you know.
Mm.
And it's not just the show. We do the show, and then there was the meet and greet after the show. So you're talking, getting back upstairs at 3, 4 in the morning, sleeping until noon, and then getting ready to do it all over again.
Mm.
It's just, I just really don't know how he did it, because he had to have just lost track of time, and it's just something that's very hard on a body.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard tapes of him saying, this is on tour now, this is in Las Vegas. He says, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen." And then he turned to the band and say, "It is afternoon, isn't it?" So, he wasn't sure whether it was an afternoon or an evening show, because it was just, it had just become such a merry-go-round.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know, I feel really bad for him, And he loved what he did. He just, that's what he lived for. But yeah, like you said, it took its toll.
Tell me about the last time you spoke to Elvis and saw him.
That was a few months before he died, and it was in Palm Springs. I had gotten a call to come down that he was in town for a few days, or not even a few days. I just said, I think I was told he was there for the day. And I'm like, I didn't want to go. I had so much stuff to do. And then just on a whim, I thought, okay, fine, I'll go down for the day. And that's like a 3-hour drive from where I lived. So I got my car, I went down, and he was there. He looked, actually, you know what? He looked pretty good. He looked really happy. He was in an absolutely great mood. He was there with a gal whose name I cannot remember, but he introduced her as, he says, "This is my new girl," blah, 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 whatever her name was. And he was just happy, he was holding her hand, walking around all shiny like a little boy in love again. Oh, whatever, here we go again. But and then after she left the kitchen, I just said, how you been? And he goes, great. He goes, I'm going to take some time off and get healthy. Those were his words. I'm going to take some time to get off, to get healthy. And he goes, and then I'm going down a new path. And I never asked what that path was. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if I even thought about it at the time. It was just conversation. After he died, like a year or two after he died, the Stamps were performing in Yorba Linda, where I was living, and we all got together for lunch. And we're all talking about the last time we saw him. And J.D. Sumner said, so I told J.D. what he had said about going down a new path. And J.D. says, well, you know what that is, don't you? And I went, no. I said, I didn't ask him. And he goes, he was going to go on a gospel tour with us. And I said, Colonel never would have allowed that. And J.D. said he was going to do it. One way or another, he was going to do it. And then that's it. That's all I know.
Well, one of the clear outs could have been that he could have got rid of Colonel Parker, maybe.
Maybe.
There was rumors and rumblings early 1977 that the Colonel had actually put Elvis's contract up for sale. Now,
really?
Now, whether that's just, sort of like media gossip or whether it was true or not, I don't know. But
I don't know either.
I mean, it's interesting that you said that he said that to you, that he was going to get himself healthier, and he was going to go down a different path. Other people have said exactly the same thing, especially when he was in Hawaii in March of 1977.
Really?
Yeah, they've said that he was, definitely going to take time off at the end of the tour, which was August 1977, which obviously he was just about to embark on when he died. I think he was going to do something after that. I think anyway.
I think he had said he wanted to take 6 months off.
Yeah.
6 months off to get healthy and then go down this so-called new path.
Now, some people have said, well, he couldn't afford to do that because, so many people are relying on him and all that. But I say, I don't think he could afford not to have done it. Because it's obvious that in 1977, things were coming to a head. Things couldn't go on the way they were going on. He was getting older. He was expected to do all these shows. When he was a young man, in late 60s, early 70s, yes, he could do it. But, when you're getting into your 40s, you have to start slowing down a little bit. So I firmly believe what you say, he was going to change courses.
Yeah, I think he knew it was time for a change. Whatever changes he felt he needed to make.
And he always wanted to be in a gospel quartet. Even when he was a young man, he wanted to be in a gospel quartet. But he was.
That's what, at home, if he sat down at the piano and sang, it was gospel. Always.
Yeah.
Up in the suite, it was gospel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you miss most about Elvis?
Oh my gosh.
I know that's probably a difficult question.
I don't know. He was just one of these people. When you were around him, you felt special. You felt almost peaceful, unless he was in a bad mood. That's a whole other story. Then you went and hid in the closet. I don't know. He was just one of those people that, have you ever had friends that they just made you feel good just to be around them? They just, you can't even put your finger on what it is.
Yeah.
They just make you happy inside.
Yeah.
And that's the way it was to be around him. You just felt happy inside.
Well, people like myself, as fans, we get the same feeling when we listen to his music, when we listen to him singing, when we see him walk out on stage in one of his concerts on television, or if we watch one of his movies. We get that same feeling that you're describing now.
He was just very special. That's all. He was eccentric and weird and lovable and just a contradiction of himself, but I don't know. He was just a very unique person, and there'll never be another.
No, there never will be another. I always say an Elvis Presley doesn't come along once in a lifetime. He comes along once. He was that unique.
Yep, period, once.
I know it's probably a difficult thing to talk about, but where were you and what were you doing the day you found out he died?
Yeah, we had just left the movie theater, turned on my radio in the car, and I caught the last sentence of the announcer saying, "Dead at the age of 42." And my heart just went, "What?" And then they play an Elvis song, of course. So I broke speed record getting home. I had a couple of phone numbers to Graceland that I never used, but I had them. So I rushed home. I called. The line is busy. I called 5 or 6 times, and the line, different numbers. I'm trying I had 3 numbers. I tried all 3 numbers. All the lines were busy, and of course that just made me panic all the more. And finally, I guess it's phone in the kitchen, I'm guessing, the maid answered. And I said, "May I speak to Charlie, please?" And she goes, "Who's calling?" And she sounded normal. So I'm like, "Oh, okay, everything's fine. She sounds fine. Everything's good." And she says, "Who's calling?" I said, "Tell him Sandy from California." And the minute Charlie got on the phone, I mean, he picked up the phone and he goes, "It's true." And he was crying. And he goes, "It's true." And then I knew,
And the shock must have hit you.
It was just, then all of a sudden that last weekend in Palm Springs just all came back, because I can still see him. Now my voice is getting shaky. I can still see him in the doorway of the Palm Springs home when I left that day, and he's standing there and waving and yelled out, "Drive safe." Those were his last words, "Drive safe."
Mm.
And all that came back to me, and now he's dead. I mean, it's not a good day.
And I mean, 43 years later, and I can still hear the emotion in your voice. And I have to admit, it's even affecting me.
Yeah.
It was such an earth-shattering moment.
And it was and you know what? It was such a horrible day too in California. It was cloudy. I mean, this is August, which should be sunny and bright, and it was cloudy and dreary, and it just, ugh.
Yes, it's a day we'll never forget.
No, that's for sure.
You did you write some books about your relationship with Elvis?
No, I did. No, I didn't write any books. I kept journals. I have like over 40 journals where at the end of the day I write down everything that happened that day, what he was wearing, who was there, what he said. They're quite detailed. I have those, but as far as books like released in publication, the only books I've done are 2 with Bud Glass. They're photo books.
Yes.
Yeah, they're the photo books. Yeah, the behind the image.
Okay, are they still available? Are they available on Amazon or anywhere like that?
I don't. Every time I say they're out of print or there are no more, or they're sold out, somebody crops up and goes, no, they're still available. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know that they are. They crop up on eBay every once in a while, but they're asking ridiculous prices, like always happens. So I really don't know, and I don't know if they'll do another printing or not. But so I have those 2 photo books, and the photo books do have a couple of excerpts from my journals in them if it relates to a particular photo.
Yes.
So
just for a little bit of background to that photo.
Correct. Yeah.
I would imagine a quick search online might find some. Anyway, it's called Elvis Behind the Image, is it?
Correct. Yes, Elvis Behind the Image.
Right.
There's two books.
Well, I've really enjoyed our chat, Sandy.
I have too.
Yes, and it's been emotional too, as well at times. I'd really like to thank you for coming on and sharing your memories with myself and our listeners as well. I'm sure they got a great kick out of it. You can never get enough Elvis.
No, you can't.
I mean, over 50 years a fan, and I still can't get enough Elvis.
Oh, I hear you. I'm still hanging in there.
Well, thanks again, Sandy, for your time, and I've really enjoyed it. And once again, thanks very much for coming on and sharing your memories about Elvis.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. I always love talking about him,
Yeah. And please take care.
You too.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again to Sandy for sharing her Elvis memories with us. Also, a special thanks to Lisa Lauren for putting me in touch with Sandy. You can contact me at elvistheultimatefanchannel@gmail.com, and you can also find us on Twitter and Facebook. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join me next time for another episode from Elvis the Ultimate Fan Channel.